By the way, Summerfest is happening, so if you hear the music at 11 o'clock on the main stage right here, it might be better than in here. So, I'm just saying, we respect your right to head out if it sounds really good. It's going to be I forget the guy's name, but it is the Gospel something stew. Gospel soul stew. I don't know. Anyhow, so just thought I'd pump that up a little bit. They're paying me a little extra for that. So anyway, just kidding. You guys, come on. Get with it today. I know I'm supposed to be funny first, but warm me up a little bit here. How many of you take the World Cup this morning and you don't want to know the score?
Wait, what?
You don't want to know it? Okay, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't say it. All right. It was a good game, though. Good game. All right. So, we're talking about, I'm trying to be funny because this gets a little rough here. We're going to be talking about David and Bathsheba the next couple of weeks. And to be honest with you, this is a rough subject matter. This is a hard subject matter. And I'm going to try to make it to where if your kids are in here this morning, they're not coming home saying, Daddy, what's this? Daddy, what's this mean? Daddy, Mommy, what's this mean? I'm going to try to mitigate some of that as we kind of cruise through. But the whole crux of the idea is there's two different ways to live your life. There's two different ways that we can live our lives. And I think it comes down to a life of love or a life of lust. And I know we generally think of lust in a context of sexuality. But I believe lust, I think we're doing a big disservice to the story if we just keep the story there. I think this idea of lust is all-consuming in many different areas of our lives when we think about what it is. And we're going to contrast a life of lust versus a life of love. You see, a life of love is sacrificing self in order to help meet the needs of others. Right? I mean, that's a simple definition of it. It's not a complete definition of it. But sacrificing self for the needs of others or for others. You think of it in a marriage context. And by the way, my marriage turned 21 this past week. So I give Joy a hand on that one. That's been a rough go. For me, it's been an easy go. For her, it's been a rough go. But we both made it. And so 21 years. And marriage is it's a journey of love. It's a journey of knowing each other, of getting to know each other. But when you start to try to live for yourself, marriages don't do well. When you live out for others, when you live out for your spouse, and when you live for her needs or his needs, things go a lot smoother. So love, in its essence, it boils down to sacrificing self for the needs of others. Lust, on the other hand, is sacrificing others for self. Sacrificing others for self. That's in a lot of different categories. You can think of trying to make your way up the ladder in business. Think of sexual sins. Think of finances. A lot of people are living lustful lives where they're doing whatever they can to get whatever they want and whatever they feel like they desire, and they're doing whatever they can do. And it doesn't matter who gets in their way. It doesn't matter what gets in their way. They're going to sacrifice them and use them and abuse them in order to get what self wants. And I think we can see that in the life of David. We'll see this in the twisted loyalties of a lustful heart. First thing we see is sordid tale. Sordid tale. It says in 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse number 1, it says this: in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war. So I don't know if that was a season, like baseball season, Just, all right, it's war time. It's spring season, and we'll see how it goes, and we'll work into. But at any rate, in the spring, at time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. Now, I've heard a lot of stories about this. And a lot of people say, well, David should have been out on the battlefield. He should have been out with his people. I don't know the exact protocol of that. I have heard that this was a time when the kings went out too, and he was idle. I don't know what was going on in his life, but he stayed behind. He sent Joab, he sent the king's men and the whole Israelite army out, and they were going and they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. I don't know why he remained in Jerusalem, if it was right or wrong, if it was normal, I don't know. I can't say for sure. But at any rate, his men were out, he was home by himself. And a lot of people know that what do they say? That an idle mind is the devil's workshop, right? Anybody else ever heard that? I'm not making that up, right? Okay, so I might not be saying it correctly, but David was by himself, he's hanging out, everybody else is out doing the work, and this happens. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. And again, I'm not going to explain, I'm just going to read this, and you guys can take it from there. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing, which was common. That's just the way the houses were set up. The roofs were kind of like your backyard or whatever. And so anyway, she was up there bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about it. Now, understand, this is the king. Back in this day, the king got what the king wanted. Okay? There's the old saying, it's good to be the king. It's good to be the king, right? Because you get what you want. And David saw this woman, and he runs the show. He runs the show, and he says, hey, find out who she is. The man said, she is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Now that should have ended the conversation. No matter what the circumstances are that were leading up to this point, right, wrong, or indifferent, that should have ended the conversation. But it didn't. It says, then David sent messengers to get her. So the king's like, good enough. Sends messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. So they have an affair, comes in, has an affair, he sends her back home. And as far as David was concerned, I assume, as far as he was concerned, no harm, no foul, that's it, I'm done, that was fun, whatever, I'm out. She went back home. Uriah will never know the difference. He's out fighting, as we'll see later. But then this happens. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I am pregnant. Game changer. Game changer. Things are different now. So now, what to do, right? What to do? What should he have done? What should he have done? Again, this isn't easy. Do you remember me saying that? What should he have done? He should have been honest about it. Said, you know what? We did this. It wasn't right. I'm sorry. But this is the situation. This is the situation we find ourselves in. And owned it. But he didn't. So you see how sin compounds? You see how this path just gets worse and worse and worse and worse? You know, there's a verse in the Bible that says, lust when it is conceived brings forth sin. Sin when it is conceived brings forth death. It's a logical progression. It's this idea of seeing something that you desire, sacrificing whatever you feel like you need to sacrifice, family, people, homes, happiness, whatever it is. Maybe it's an addiction, maybe it's, again, somebody, money, power, prestige, being a good athlete. That was my biggest fault, obviously. You know what I've noticed is that I don't go on a diet anymore, I just buy bigger shirts. It's so much easier. That's so much easier. I got my shirt on this morning, I'm like, look how big this thing is. You can't see anything. It's awesome. So, anyway, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm also figuring out that the older I get, the more I'm after comfort, not style, as you can probably notice. But anyhow, at any rate, it could be anything. It could be going after whatever it is. You go after it, and you give whatever it is, and then you get caught in something, or you mess up, or you go sideways with the IRS, or you do whatever it is, and you start lying more, and trying to get out of it more, and trying to cover it up more, and trying to whatever you're trying to put self up here, which self is never supposed to be up here, and you keep building on it, and building on it, and building on it, until pretty soon there's casualties. And the casualties might be the loss of relationships, it might be the loss of your spouse, it might be the loss of a job, it might be the loss of your freedom, it might be the loss of something, but it'll be the loss of something, because lust and sin do not pay. They bring us down to death. They kill. So she comes back and she says to David, I'm pregnant. So David sent this word to Joab. Joab is his commander, his general, the head of the army. And by the way, Uriah, turns out, is one of David's mighty men. He's one of the best of the best. So David sent this word to Joab, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent him to David. Now here's a perfect opportunity to bring him in and say, look, Uriah, here's what happened. This isn't going to be an easy conversation. You know, again, we can blame Bathsheba in this story, but the truth is, back then, she had no choice. She really had no choice. I don't know if it was, it might have been. She might have jumped at the opportunity. I don't know her heart, but I know God places this story on the shoulders of David. So he had the perfect opportunity. There's our band. There they are. So David sent this word to Joab. I'll try my best. Send me Uriah the Hittite. So this is his opportunity. They're there together. He can tell him the story and just get it off his chest, get it right, and have it out and figure things out and try to work something out. But this is what he does. This part is a twisted vision. This is what going after self and living for self does to us. Living after our lusts and living after our desires twists us up. It gets us to where we can't see the plain truth in front of us for trying to see how we can twist it into making it better for ourselves. Okay, and again, I think we can see this through what David was doing. Just check it out. When Uriah came to him, so he comes to him, it's just them two. David asked him how Joab was, how the soldiers were, and how the war was going. It's a small talk, I guess. So he asked him all these questions, and Uriah's, I'm sure, dutifully answering the questions as best as he can. Then David said to Uriah, go down to your house and wash your feet. So go get cleaned up. So Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. See what he's doing, right? I hope it becomes clear in a second. David's sending him home to be with his wife. He's been away for a long time. He said, hey, go get cleaned up. He sends a gift. I don't know, cheese board, champagne. I don't know what he sent. But he sent something along with him, flowers. I don't know what it was. He sent a gift along with him. And he says, go to your house, get cleaned up, and just hang out. And let whatever happens, happens. That's the Greek. But Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace. Check this out. This guy is amazing. Uriah is an amazing guy. Maybe a little imbalanced, but amazing. Right? Loyal. Willing to sacrifice himself and his desires for the greater cause of the country. For the greater cause of the king. Notice the contrast. As we work through this, notice the contrast between Uriah and David. Uriah is willing to sacrifice his natural desires, the correct desires, the okay desires to go after. He sacrifices those to make sure the king is okay. The whole time, David's trying to get him to go in and be with his wife so he can cover up his sins. He's trying to use Uriah to satisfy his desires, but Uriah's sacrificing his desires for the needs of the king. That's the difference between love and lust. A life of going after self and a life of self-sacrifice. Uriah slept at the entrance to the palace with all his master's servants and did not go down to his house. He didn't even go down to his house. He slept outside the king's palace. David was told, Uriah did not go home. What? So he asked Uriah, haven't you just come from a military campaign? I mean, didn't you just come back from like months away from home? And I'm telling you, I'm relieving you of all your duties and saying, hey, go home to your wife. Go home to your wife. And Uriah did not go home, so he just asked Uriah, haven't you just come home from a military campaign? Why didn't you go home? And David's like, go home. Go home. So you can do that, you can do what married couples do and cover up what I did. So I can wash my hands of the situation and just cover it up. Doesn't work that way. That's not how it works. Because God isn't in the business of waiting on us to mess up so He can punish us. But God is drawing us closer and closer and closer to Him. And part of that journey of drawing closer to Him is Him bringing us on the journey of getting honest and real and raw with one another. And He doesn't simply let us cover things up and get away with them. Just like we as parents don't just let our kids cover it. We love them more than that, than to let them just get away with stuff and cover it up. This isn't a case of God being mean. This is a case of God loving unconditionally and beautifully and perfectly. David was told Uriah did not go home. He said, why didn't you go home? Uriah said to David, now check this out. Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah are staying in tents, and my commander Joab and my Lord's men are camped in the open country. How could I go to my house to eat and drink and make love to my wife? As surely as you live, I will not do such a thing. That is the difference between a life burnt up pursuing self and a life burnt up in the self-sacrificing love for others. Then you know what? I'm not going to go down and do something as go take all the pleasures of home. I'm not going to do that when all the people that I'm with are out there suffering and staying in tents, and the ark is out there, and I'm not going to do that. How dare I do that? And David, you know what David should have done? David should have been like, you're getting a promotion. You're the best of the best. And you're crazy, and I don't get it, but you're the best of the best. And that kind of sacrifice deserves recognition. We see that all the time, don't we? We see when someone in the military gives themselves for a greater cause or goes on the grenade, so to speak, or does something amazing, that's recognized, isn't it? That kind of loyalty, that kind of love for something greater than themselves is recognized. But what happened here? David can't see it. David has twisted vision. Why is David's vision so twisted on this? Because his goal is not to find out how amazing Uriah is and how loyal Uriah is and see what's right in front of his face. David's goal is to make sure David gets away with David's sin. And so everything else goes by the wayside. And you guys know what that's like. You guys know what that's like. We all lust after something. None of us are immune from this story in some shape or fashion. And when we get in the mode, when Trevor is in the mode of making sure Trevor gets what Trevor wants. I don't normally talk about myself. I could use Austin's name. Maybe that would make it feel better. But when I don't want to point fingers when we're all in this story together. But when I go after what I want and I'm willing to do whatever I want, I can see how great my kids are being. I can see how much they're wanting to have a conversation with me, or how much my wife is wanting to have a conversation with me, or how much something, and I'm like, no, I want to do what I want to do. Precisely. Was that you, Austin, or was that? Awesome. Oh, man. I love church so much. All right, so anyhow, when you think about this, and you think about that, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, and I miss what's right in front of me. See, when someone's having an affair, When someone, let's just say that, when someone's having an affair and they're after that affair and they're doing whatever it takes to cover it up and do that, their spouse can be the most loyal, loving, kind person ever and prove their loyalty and kindness to them, and they can't see it because what they're after is not seeing what's right in front of them. They have that twisted vision of a lustful heart that's just after themselves, and it blinds us to the obvious that's all around us. David couldn't see this amazing soldier sitting right in front of him, this amazing person, for the lust that was burning in his heart and the lustful desire to make sure no one ever found out about it. Lust, when it is conceived, brings forth sin. Sin, when it's conceived, brings forth death. Then David said to him, "Stay here one more day." He's got to figure this out. "Stay here one more day, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him. David had him over for dinner. At David's invitation, he ate and drank with him, and David made him drunk. Figures, all right, here's the way we'll play this. I'll get him liquored up. So David made him drunk. I don't know how David made him drunk. I guess he kept giving him stuff. But David made him drunk. But in the evening, Uriah went out to sleep on his mat among his master's servants. He did not go home. David figured, well, at least if I get him drunk, he'll go home. And he'll do what I need him to do. And he refused to. Even when he was drunk, he was loyal to his king and self-sacrificing. And he went out and he laid where he laid. And here we see another casualty of lust. You see, when we live out lives for self and we pursue self, there's always casualties. I know last message we were talking about the beauty of grace. That was a whole lot more fun than this one. But no less necessary. Another casualty of lust. When we live after ourselves and we pursue self, guess what? There's always casualties. Marriages are destroyed because of people pursuing lust. Businesses are destroyed because people pursuing themselves through business, lusting after money. Relationships are destroyed because of lusting after self and pride and saying, you know what, there's no way I'm gonna ever admit to anything. And there's no way I'm gonna do it. And relationships are destroyed. So much is destroyed when we go after self. When we live for us and go after our passions and our lusts. So much is destroyed. I've known people who, with addictions that are hooked on things and they're good people. They're good people. I mean, all things being equal, they're good people, but they've got this addiction, and it is amazing to me what people are willing to sacrifice for a pill or a bottle or whatever it may be. But I can turn that around and say, look what you're willing to sacrifice for what you go after. There are always casualties when we live for self. And here's this one. Check this out. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. He tried to get him he tried to handle this in the way we've seen, and that's not working. And so what does he do? In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. He has Uriah carry this note. In it, he wrote this: "Put Uriah out in front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him, so he will be struck down and die." He couldn't see that this guy was one of the most amazing soldiers in the entire army. One of the most amazing, loyal guy that would give his life for himself. And because he's trying to cover up his lustful ways, what's he do? He sends with his own hand, he sends it in Uriah's own hand, his death note, his death sentence. says, put him in there where the fighting's fiercest and withdraw him, and he'll be struck down and die. So while Joab had the city under siege, he put Uriah at the place where he knew the strongest defenders were. When the men of the city came out and fought against Joab, some of the men in David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. It's a bad story, but it gets worse. Joab sent David a full account of the battle. He instructed the messenger. Now check this out. Joab instructs the messenger, when you have finished giving the king this account of the battle, the king's anger may flare up because they got beat. They made a strategic error. So he says the king's anger may flare up, and he may ask you, why did you get so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know that they would shoot arrows from the wall? This is day one stuff. You don't do this. He said that the king may get mad, but here, who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal? Didn't a woman... Wait, Jessica, from the wall. Oh, wait, I'm right. Who killed Abimelech? I normally have all these passages memorized. I just don't this one. All right. See, that was the example of living for self and not admitting you just screwed up. All right, so anyway, my apologies. Who killed Abimelech, son of Jerubbaal? Didn't a woman drop an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebez? Why did you get so close to the wall? Now, Joab's thinking very specifically here. He's going to say the story. If he asks you this, then say to him, moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. So, the messenger set out, and when he arrived, he told David everything Joab had sent him to say. The messenger said to David, the men overpowered us and came out against us in the open, but we drove them back to the entrance of the city gate. Then the archers shot arrows at your servants from the wall, and some of the king's men died. It wasn't just Uriah who was sacrificed here. This is one man's lustful heart after one woman and him pursuing it out to its end. And look what happens. Lust, when it's conceived, brings forth sin. Sin, when it's conceived, brings forth death. It's a progression. When we live for self, there are casualties. When we live for ourselves, things are going to get sideways. They're going to get twisted. People are going to get hurt. These men died. Then he drops this one and says, moreover, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead. David told the messengers, say this to Joab. Look what David said. Look what this twist. Now, David was a man after God's own heart. Matter of fact, the Bible says David was a man after God's own heart. He pursued God in every way except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. This is a good guy. David's a man after God's own heart. When we hear this story, we cannot say, yeah, I know someone who's like that. We better say, oh my, I'm just as capable as David. I'm just as capable as David. I need Jesus now. I need him today. I didn't need him yesterday. I'll need him. I didn't just need him yesterday. I don't just need him tomorrow. I need him now. This was a good guy. David was a man who pursued God in many ways, except for this matter. And look what he said. After he heard this, all these people died. After he had commanded that it happened to cover up his sin, look what he says. Say this to Joab. Don't let this upset you. The sword devours one as well as the other. Press the attack against the city and destroy it. Say this to encourage Joab. David's like, deed's done. Cool. Hey, tell him not to let it bother him. Tell Joab no worries, it happens. One guy, it's a battle. One guy dies, the other one dies. It happens. And that was it. Hey, you see how an otherwise God's pursuer can get twisted up when he pursues self, when she pursues self, when we pursue self, and we live out for our desires and our lusts in spite of Christ in us. Say this to encourage Joab. And we see this. I want you to see this. Now that's David. But I also want you to see David. In 2 Samuel 23, David's recounting at the end of his life the story of his mighty men. The story of his mighty men. I want you to see this contrast in David's own life. It says this in 2 Samuel chapter 23. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David at the cave of Adullam. Now this is a whole different time frame. Whole different time frame, but this is David. In a similar situation, look at his reaction. During harvest time, 3 of the 30 chief warriors came down to David at the cave of Adullam, while a band of Philistines was encamped in the valley of Rephaim. At that time, David was in the stronghold, and the Philistine garrison was at Bethlehem. David longed or desired. Right? That's what lust is, desire. David longed for water and said, "Oh, that someone would get me a drink of water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." Saying, "Oh man, if I could use a drink of water." How many of you have ever been thirsty? You ever been? I hear if you exercise a lot, you get that way. I'll take your word on that. I've been thirsty. We did 2-a-days in soccer practice when I was in college in August in Tennessee. It was hot and humid. And I remember being, back then, if you didn't do something right, they punished you. How'd they punish you back then? You couldn't drink water. It seems ridiculous now, but that's how they did it. You couldn't drink water. If you got in trouble or you didn't do it, you couldn't drink water. You know, I can't even imagine doing that now, but they do that. And I remember how thirsty you get, and you do anything to get to that drinking fountain. And I remember when we had one of the big orange things, and I don't think they ever cleaned it, and they didn't have any cups, and you had to get down and drink it, and it stunk to high heaven. On a normal day, there's no way I would drink out of that thing. Well, in those days, I was fighting people to get to it. They get out of my way. I was here first. We're fighting and pushing and trying to get that water down our throats. David's saying, "Hey, I'm thirsty. I'm thirsty. I need something to drink. If only someone would get me something from the well near the gate of Bethlehem." So the 3 mighty warriors broke through the Philistine lines. Those guys, 3 guys, go up, sneak past the Philistine lines, or break past them. I always thought sneak, but it says break past them. They get past the lines. They draw water from the well near the gate of Bethlehem and carried it back to David. Those guys, he said, "Hey, I'm thirsty." They risked their lives to get him the water he wanted. But here's what he did then. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. They gave him that water that they got from that well, and he said, sort of the same thing Uriah the Hittite said, didn't he? Uriah said, how can I sleep in the comforts of my home and eat and drink and be with my wife? How can I do those things when my men are out there, when my commander's out there, when the Ark of the Covenant's out there? I will not do that, so help me. Look what David does. David does the same thing, but he refused to drink it. You see the contrast? See the contrast between living for self and self-sacrificing for others? He refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out before the Lord. "Far be it from me, Lord, to do this," he said. Is it not the blood of men who went at the risk of their lives?" And David would not drink it. He wouldn't let himself have the pleasure of it because of the guys that risked their lives. He just poured it out so he could be with them and understand the sacrifice that they made. That is awesome. That is awesome. But the contrast is what we see with David and Bathsheba. Here's the aftermath of it. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. Can you imagine? I don't know if she was at fault. I don't know if she felt compelled. I don't know if she felt like the king will kill me if I don't. I don't know if you could even say no to the king. I doubt it. But because she got swept up into this thing, now she's pregnant with another man's baby, and her husband is dead. And she mourned. After the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. So there you go. That's it. That's the end of that story. Except for this. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. The Lord wasn't angry at David and he was just going to kill him and do it. Here's the thing. It displeased the Lord, but the Lord was his father and God loved him and he displeased his loving father. So his loving father wasn't going to leave it here. He had to help David. And we're going to see that story next week. But here's the thing. You see the contrast. You see the contrast. There are some people in here today, no doubt. There are some people in here today who are in the middle of this whirlwind of living for self. You're in the middle of this whirlwind of just doing everything it is to make sure you're happy and to make sure your needs are met, and you're willing to sacrifice whatever, whoever, whenever for you. There's some people here like that. But there's a better way to live. That way just gets you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole and the tangled web of deceit and lies and pride and ugliness, and there's going to be casualties, and it's no way to truly live. There's a better way. There's a better way. Let's not be like the David with Bathsheba who saw, lusted, went for it, and then spent the rest of his time trying to cover up and stomp over everybody. Let's not do that. Guys, we have Christ in us who gave his everything so that we could be with him forever. So that we could be in his presence and be with the Father forever. Guys, we don't need you living for yourself. You know what we need here at Foundry? You know what this community needs? You know what your family needs? You know what your spouse needs? You know what your kids need? You know what my kids need? My spouse, my friend. They need us living lives, knowing we're eternally secure in Christ, and living like Uriah and living like David with his mighty men when they brought the water, and saying, you know what? I'm not going to consume everything upon my lust. Instead, I'm going to use the power in me to live out for others and sacrifice self, because I'm already taken care of in Christ. So I'm going to give myself for others so that I can love and give out instead of lust. The contrast is stark. They look a lot the same sometimes. But one kills and one brings life. Let's live for what brings life. Let's love God with our whole heart, soul, mind, and strength, and let's love each other as ourselves. Dearly Father, Lord, as we think about this, Lord, these messages aren't like warm and fuzzy. I like warm and fuzzy. But the truth is, God, we're brought to a bit of a crossroads with this story. We're all brought to this kind of place of self-reflection. To really ask the questions, how am I living? Who am I living for? And God, we do have a choice in the matter. We can burn up all of what's around us on ourselves and keep trying to pursue something that never brings satisfaction, never brings happiness, always brings difficulty and deceit and trouble and death. Or God, you've given us a much better choice. With you in us, God, we can go out and we can live out for others, to tell them the truth and to live pure and to live honest. And when we make mistakes, own them. And to live a life that's from the inside out, flowing from your heart out into our community, into our families, into others. God, help us. Fill us with your Holy Spirit and help us today. Lord, if we're living out for ourselves, God, help us to stop. God, and if we're living out for others, give us the strength to keep going. We'll just give you the praise. Thank you for loving us enough to not leave us wallowing in self, but to love us so that we can become more like you, a conduit of love from God to this world. God, help us now. Help us to reflect on this. In Jesus' name, amen.